Witchcraft Works begins with a young man who looks lethargic and has no enthusiasm at all for life named Takamiya Honoka. Honoka himself is a high school student who goes to school quite far from his home, where he has to take the bus every day to go to school. However, every day Honoka finds himself in a situation he doesn't want, where the most popular girl in his school always takes the same bus as him, and she is Kagari Ayaka. For unknown reasons, Ayaka always takes the same bus as Honoka, even though she is the daughter of the principal, who is of course very rich and can use her own vehicle to go to school. Whenever Ayaka was there, people always surrounded her to the point that it made Honoka uncomfortable, and always kept his distance from her as much as possible. Unfortunately, this situation can never be avoided by Honoka, who has no friends at all in class or even at school, as Ayaka is his classmate and also sits next to him. While everyone at school always wanted to get closer to Ayaka, Honoka tried to avoid her, and never even spoke to Ayaka at all. But at one point, Honoka accidentally dropped his eraser near Ayaka, which Ayaka then picked up and returned to Honoka. Unfortunately, this incident turned out to be bad luck for Honoka. Ayaka's fans who knew about this eventually bullied and beat Honoka. It didn't stop there. In his class, Honoka even became the target of bullying from his classmates, where he was forced to fill in for their cleaning duties. When Honoka is taking out the trash, he finds a stuffed rabbit and a sign saying that the school building will fall. Not long after that, Honoka was taken aback when what he had just read suddenly happened. A school building fell right on top of him somehow. Honoka, who thought that he was dead, was surprised because he was saved by someone who took him flying, and she was none other than the school idol Kagari Ayaka. From there, it was known that Ayaka was a witch, while the attack she received just now was also a magic attack from another magician. Because their efforts failed, the magician who attacked Honoka then ordered the army of tin soldier rabbits to continue the attack. While Ayaka was fighting the rabbit monster and telling Honoka to stay behind her, Honoka instead went to a place where he heard that someone was calling for him, which was actually a trap from another witch. When the soldier rabbits were about to execute him, Honoka just stood there silently, thinking that this was all just a dream. But luckily, Ayaka came at the right time and saved him by burning all the soldier rabbits. Just like before, Honoka thought that Ayaka was still beautiful for wanting to save someone like him even in a dream. Ayaka didn't respond to anything other than saying that protecting Honoka was her mission, because, to her, Honoka was her princess. Honoka, who heard this, was speechless, completely not understanding the meaning of Ayaka's words. The next day, Ayaka came to school by bus like the previous days. But Honoka didn't expect that what she thought was a dream the previous day turned out to be a reality, where his quiet life slowly began to change because Ayaka started to act friendly and wanted to come to school with him. Ayaka's fans seemed very annoyed to see her together with a loser like Honoka, while Honoka was uncomfortable because he was afraid of being beaten up again by Ayaka's fans. The effect was that the people who bullied Honoka once again beat him, but this time Ayaka protected him. She didn't even hesitate to scorch anyone who tried to harm Honoka with her fire magic. In the afternoon, Honoka was invited to have a meal with Ayaka, complete with a romantic scene between the two of them, which was witnessed by her fans. Honoka, who was uncomfortable with the glares from Ayaka's fans, chose to leave. But at that time, Honoka was surprised that the place where Ayaka had previously fought had returned to normal. Then suddenly, a woman appeared and explained that it was all illusion magic. It turned out that the woman was a member of the Tower Witches named Kureishi Tanpopo, who was also the perpetrator of Honoka's attack yesterday. Tanpopo tries to kidnap Honoka, but just then Ayaka appears and stops her with fire magic. This time, Tanpopo brought her entire army against Ayaka, not wanting to repeat her previous mistake of being unprepared, in which her troops attacked Ayaka and Honoka simultaneously. For the umpteenth time, Ayaka protected Honoka, where her body was pierced by hundreds of swords. In this situation, Honoka regretted not listening to Ayaka's words to stay close to her. At that time Ayaka only asked Honoka not to run away and not to stay away from her anymore, then told him to close his eyes. When Honoka closed his eyes, a huge explosion occurred and Tanpopo's army of rabbits was blown away and defeated, forcing Tanpopo to run away. After the fight, Ayaka's body returned to normal without any injuries, and the two returned home together. The next day at school, Honoka is surprised by the arrival of a transfer student who is none other than Tanpopo, along with 4 other Tower Witches members. Until now, Honoka still didn't know why he was being targeted by the Tower Witches. The next day, when Honoka was about to enter class, he was very surprised when he saw Tanpopo and the gang already being tortured by Ayaka. And this is where the true purpose of the Tower Witches is revealed, where what they are after is Honoka's body which has white stuff in it. Suddenly, the fifth transfer student named Menao May came to kidnap Honoka, freed her friends who were tied up, and then took him somewhere else. However, even though the five of them fought Ayaka alone, Ayaka could beat them all very easily. But when May attacks Honoka until he is unconscious, it is precisely at that moment that Ayaka is injured. Ayaka did manage to save Honoka in the end, but the witch managed to escape. When Honoka's consciousness returned, he looked surprised to find that there wasn't a scar on his neck, instead, it moved to Ayaka. For what happened, Honoka realized that the damage he received would transfer to Ayaka. Therefore, not wanting to be a burden to Ayaka, Honoka specifically asked Ayaka to teach him how to use magic, so that he could protect himself and help Ayaka. Here Ayaka explains her status as a workshop witches whose mission is to protect peace from tower witches whose goal is to create chaos everywhere. Before practice started, the two of them practically went on a date, starting from shopping and eating together on school holidays. However, on the way, they were again attacked by members of the Tower Witches, who as usual were easily defeated by Ayaka even though she was surrounded on all sides and made them all flee. After that, Honoka meets Kagari Kazani, who is Ayaka's mother, as well as the principal and leader of the Tower Witches. Besides that, she was also the one who ordered Ayaka to protect Honoka. After an encounter with Kazani, Ayaka begins training Honoka on how to use his own latent magic powers. Unexpectedly, Honoka began to show his talent even though he was still very weak and still couldn't do anything. Later, as the two of them ride the school bus, they find themselves trapped by a powerful tower witch named Kronori. This time Ayaka really can't do anything, because she subdues Ayaka by injuring Honoka and using her latent powers of transferring all of Honoka's damage to her, then gives him a candy that she predicts he will swallow in the future. But in a critical condition, Ayaka unleashed her hidden power, and instantly attacked Kronori and her cronies mercilessly, forcing them to retreat before things got any worse. After that, Ayaka was treated to recover from the wound she received, while Honoka decided to keep the candy. After Ayaka wakes up, she returns to training Honoka to use his magic. Starting from flying exercises to the ability to make an object or person light enough to be lifted. Meanwhile, with the attribute of a mage's robe, their presence became undetectable by ordinary humans. Apparently, the series of events and attackers that occurred had something to do with the awakening of Medusa, who was currently being sealed by the witch's workshop. Medusa herself can be said to be the most feared tower witch because of her extraordinary strength. Her awakening begins and she intends to target Honoka and the workshop witches members. On the other hand, Honoka's sister, Takamiya Kasumi, seems to be starting to get jealous knowing that her older brother is close to Ayaka. Meanwhile, Tanpopo and her gang still haven't given up and are still trying to kidnap Honoka for the umpteenth time. Based on information from Kronori, Ayaka's strength can weaken when Ayaka is away from Honoka, which is what Tanpopo and her group take advantage of. Luckily, Kasumi, who turned out to be a workshop witch, came to save her older brother. By summoning her giant doll, Kasumi fights against Tanpopo's giant rabbit. The fight initially became a bit difficult for Kasumi as she fought multiple witches at once. However, her summoned bear grows so large that its attack destroys a significant portion of the town while leaving the people unharmed. After the fight was over, Ayaka promised to watch over Honoka 24/7, even inviting Honoka to stay at her house, which only made Kasumi more jealous. Ayaka then returns to her house with Honoka to ask his mother if he can stay over at her house from now on. Even though Kasumi vehemently rejects this, Takamiya Kamachi, their mother, agrees that Honoka should stay with Ayaka. It turns out that Kamachi in the past had an agreement with Kazani, in which they agreed to marry off their future children as a result of their being unable to marry each other. Upon arriving at Ayaka's incredibly luxurious mansion, Ayaka and Honoka found themselves face to face with Medusa, who had previously managed to escape. Ayaka tries to fight Medusa, but Medusa uses her magic to turn her into stone. With no other choice, Honoka ultimately decides to swallow the candy Kronori gave him earlier, drawing out the white princess, Evermillion. Evermillion then uses her powers to beat back Medusa, shockingly destroying most of the mansion and a large part of the school as well, which infuriates Kazani to call for a tower witch hunt by gathering all the witches' workshop members. Since there is a time limit for Evermillion's appearance, she reveals that all Honoka had to do was kiss Ayaka with love so that her curse would be lifted, which he does. With Ayaka resurrected, she uses her powers to defeat Medusa. Meanwhile, with the mansion destroyed, Ayaka is transferred to Honoka's house and lives with her there. Meanwhile, Honoka and Ayaka's closeness becomes a problem for the student council supervisor named Mikage, because Honoka is close to Ayaka, who is known as princess in their school. This indirectly made the teacher tell Honoka to know his place and stay away from Ayaka. But this is just a trick for Mikage to keep them both away. Mikage explains about the candy Honoka had previously eaten, which was said to be seal-breaking particles. Inside Honoka's body were actually 5 magic seals, of which one had been released. It was because of this seal that the headmaster, leader of the witch's workshop, as well as Ayaka's mother, watched over Honoka through her daughter to protect the seal that was in Honoka's body. And if one of the seals is broken, the cursed power of the 5 seals will destroy the world and cannot be stopped. According to Mikage, the only way to prevent this is by sealing Honoka completely. Not long after, Ayaka comes across the magic dimension and knocks out Mikage, only to then bring Honoka back with her. Meanwhile, to prevent this from happening again, Ayaka uses her status as a semi-official princess at the school to unilaterally replace the student council president with Honoka. Meanwhile, Honoka and Ayaka live together at home like a husband and wife. This made Tanpopo and her gang jealous of their closeness. Unbeknownst to Honoka, Ayaka had secretly allowed Tanpopo and the others to live with them. Even Medusa, who is their biggest enemy, was allowed to live there for no apparent reason. The next day, Kazani came to the house and accidentally met members of the Tower Witches. When Kazani was about to catch them, Ayaka surprisingly restrained her mother from catching them. It seems that Ayaka herself conspired with the Tower Witches to protect Honoka after she learned about the fact that Kazani intended to seal Honoka. Ayaka even let herself join Medusa to boost her power. Meanwhile, Kazani herself finally understood that Medusa was actually after her daughter's body, which could be said to be the perfect witch. Kazani, who was thought to have lost due to being hit by Medusa's petrify magic, finally turned things around by moving them to a dungeon to wait for their punishment later. Honoka and Ayaka plot against Kazani, whereupon Ayaka borrows some of Honoka's power to escape, damaging another section of the school, to Kazani's despair. Ayaka is ready to face her mother, but Kazani ignores them and demands all of them go home instead. One day, Honoka has a dream about Ayaka's past when she just entered school. As a transfer student, Ayaka is hated by other students because she is considered arrogant. On top of that, Ayaka was also bullied by other students to the point where her mother asked 2 similarly young workshop witches to watch over her. She often spent her after-class time looking for a certain boy at a nearby school until she finally found Honoka. From there, Ayaka felt like she had a bond with Honoka, and always wanted to be his friend, explaining why Ayaka was always around him, even willing to take the school bus that went in the same direction as Honoka and arranged her seat so that it was next to Honoka. In the present, Honoka is forced to face challenges to his authority as student council president. The president previously lied to a notorious criminal named Rinant that Honoka had physically abused her. In revenge, Rinant organizes her entire gang to destroy the school before challenging Honoka to a one-on-one duel. Because Honoka didn't have any abilities, he was beaten up by Rinant at that time. But Ayaka tries to help Honoka by wearing a witch's robe attribute along with Tanpopo and the others so that their presence will not be seen by other students. With the help of Ayaka and the others, Honoka ultimately manages to win the game, save the school from destruction, and make a name for himself as the hero who saved the school. It is later revealed that Ayaka deliberately manipulated the deposed president from the start just to reaffirm Honoka's position at school. After that incident, Ayaka decides to teach Honoka how to use offensive magic so that Honoka can protect himself. He even had to be dropped from a building in order to unleash his potential strength. In a panic, Honoka unknowingly ends up summoning a giant image of Ayaka in a sexy nurse outfit that catches the 2 of them before punching a nearby building. Due to the excessive use of mana, Honoka eventually faints. On the other hand, the perspective then turned to someone named Weekend trying to negotiate with Kazani. Weekend herself is a famous terrorist who has planted mass magic explosives in various corners of the city. If Kazani doesn't want the magic explosive to be detonated by Weekend, Kazani will have to give Honoka and Ayaka to her. Of course, Kazani refused this, so bombs were detonated all over the city. From this, it is also revealed that Weekend is the mastermind behind Medusa's escape and all of the attacks. With Kazani using almost all of her magic power to withstand the damage done to the city, she's become exhausted and Weekend takes advantage of this opportunity to take Kazani hostage. The witch's workshop is in crisis as Ayaka and Honoka emerge to find themselves in a broken city. Without Kazani's power, the workshop witches in town couldn't use any magic. Things get worse when Weekend catches a group of workshop witches and straps magical bombs to them, demanding that they hand over Honoka in 30 minutes or she will detonate her hostage one by one. While Rinant with Kasumi, Tanpopo, and the others try to defuse the situation, Ayaka brings Honoka down to the core of the city to renew the contract using Honoka's latent powers. At the very last second, Honoka managed to complete his contract, so that the workshop witches could use their magic again to rescue the hostages and capture Weekend. But the fight isn't over yet. Weekend uses hidden bombs to then blow up Honoka's friends. Luckily, thanks to the contract he just executed, Honoka was able to use magic to heal everyone who was injured. But Ayaka stopped him before Honoka became the victim of his own power. While Honoka is still unconscious, Ayaka goes off on her own to confront Weekend, while Medusa comes to the rescue of Tanpopo and the others who had previously been captured by Weekend's underlings. When Ayaka arrived at Weekend's place, the fight took place without any resistance from Ayaka. Even so, Ayaka was able to survive the various attacks launched by Weekend thanks to the strength given by Honoka. Unfortunately, Weekend had more preparation as she had planted various hidden bombs in that place a month ago, so that in the end even the invulnerable Ayaka was defeated by Weekend. Back at Honoka's house, Mikage ends up reviving Honoka, then delivers a message that Weekend plans to destroy the shelter unless Honoka is delivered to her in 30 minutes. When Honoka arrived at the scene, he looked sad, frustrated, and angry when he saw Ayaka lying weak and helpless. Because of this, Honoka gave Ayaka some more power to defeat Weekend before she can destroy the shelter. As expected, Ayaka, with the power given by Honoka, managed to defeat Weekend very easily. But what they didn't expect was that Weekend was still able to use her last power to set off her bomb. Like it or not, Honoka had to use all of his magical abilities to withstand the explosion that was happening. But due to the enormous pressure exerted on his body, Honoka fainted in an attempt to stop the explosion. When he fainted, Honoka was reunited with the spirit of Evermillion. At that time, Evermillion offered to help Honoka to revive everyone who was hit by the explosion, and all the buildings that had been destroyed by the mass explosion would return to normal. But Evermillion wants a sacrifice that is none other than Honoka himself, and Ayaka will automatically die with him if Honoka accepts the offer, considering that all the wounds Honoka received will be received by Ayaka too. Having no other choice, in the end, Honoka chose to sacrifice their life to revive everyone who had died and restore the entire city that had been destroyed to its original condition. However, after everything was finished, Ayaka asked Evermillion to just take her life and let Honoka live because he had dared to sacrifice everything for the city and other people. At that moment, all of Ayaka's strength disappeared, and her body fell down without breathing again. It didn't end there. Weekend, who still didn't give up, tried to kill Honoka right then and there. But Honoka completely ignored Weekend and returned to the lifeless Ayaka's side. Seeing Honoka's sincerity, Weekend decides to have Honoka healed and acknowledges her defeat, shortly before running into Chronori. With help and direction from Mikage, Honoka works on a way to bring Ayaka back to life. By forming a magic circle, coupled with using some of Honoka's blood in a kiss, but not a kiss on the lips, miraculously, Ayaka regains consciousness and is successfully resurrected. Meanwhile, Chronori has managed to catch Weekend and her underlings with the trap she had prepared. But because Kazani wants to know more information from Weekend, she ended up fighting Chronori. With the big fight between the two witch group leaders, great destruction occurred in the area where they fought. In the end, Kazani managed to win the fight after she received quite severe and many injuries all over her body. The next day, Honoka awakens in the morning to the presence of Ayaka, who has survived her death. The two of them return to their daily lives as two people who were planned to be married by their parents, without realizing that both of them had feelings of love for one another. As for Tanpopo and the others, they still haven't given up on kidnapping Honoka from Ayaka. Honoka, who used to be alone and gloomy, is now getting used to her life, which is always busy and can even be said to be chaotic every day.